What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions. I'm here with my co-host Ann Zeta, but we also have Alberto Govea, LULAC council lead for 4568, and Stephanie Drenka with Texas Civil Rights Project. They're here to talk about their case, but also this is a perfect time with what's going on in Tarrant County when we look at preparing for elections. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And Alberto.
Thank you.
So we typically start off by asking any guests that we have what their Fort Worth story is. So I'll let both of you decide who's going to go first with that question. What is your Fort Worth story?
I will defer to Alberto, the Fort Worth resident, for his first.
Well, I moved here in 1993, and in 1995 we started our LULAC council here. So we're right at about 30 years of work, and we're actually the oldest active council here in Fort Worth. There's other councils, but ours is the oldest active, and I think in many ways the ones that is more active in all areas. You know, we have yearly programs. For example, coming up we have the Tree of Hope, Árbol de la Esperanza Christmas program that we do every year. That we have Pancho Claus, Santa's cousin, come in and bring the gifts to the children. So we have that program. We have the Fiesta de Libros, book fair. We have several other programs, and of course, general advocacy program and voter registration and voter information, things of that nature that we've been doing now for years.
And you've also successfully gotten the street renaming done as well in Fort Worth. I remember being on the council, I think, when that finally came to fruition, but it was many, many years of talking to the city of Fort Worth about honoring Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, when we first started working on that, most people say, it shouldn't be a problem, but it took us almost 10 years to get it done. And the truth is that they would always say, well, you need to get petitions in this area. You need to talk to this certain neighborhood group. You need to, it really did seem like they wanted us to go away, and just give up. But of course we didn't, because we really felt that, if Austin and Dallas and, Houston, all those areas can honor them with signage, there was no reason why in Fort Worth, that supposedly celebrates diversity as well, would not want to do that. And the reality is that most of us here know who Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta was, but I think a lot of young people don't know. And if you have the names up, maybe they'll at least ask the question, who were they? Yeah. And in finding out who they were, they can be proud of that history and the work they did, and maybe even emulate some of the work as well. And so that's why for us it was so important. And of course the larger community as well. We want to educate them as well. We want them to know what the contributions our community has been able to, some of the things that our community has done, not only for the country but also our local community. So that's why it was important.
And just for context, what is LULAC?
LULAC, it's an abbreviation. It actually stands for the League of United Latin American Citizens. It's been around since 1929, and it's a Hispanic advocacy organization. And what it wants to do is make sure that our community is able to enjoy the pursuit of happiness, if you will, here in the United States, just like any other community. We stand for progress.
Well, Stephanie, I know that LULAC plus League of Women's Voters and a couple are really about this case against a racial gerrymander at Tarrant County with Judge Tim O'Hare. I would love to hear your Fort Worth story. Do you have any connections to Fort Worth?
Absolutely. So my Fort Worth story began when I was 10 years old, and my parents moved us from Georgia to a suburb in DFW, and we toured the stockyards, and I think it was my first moment of realization that, I live in Texas now. That suburb that I grew up in was South Lake, Texas, and so I have a Fort Worth adjacent story in that I was very active in advocating for the Cultural Competency Action Plan as an alumni of South Lake Carroll, and it was Tarrant County Judge Tim O'Hare who co-founded the South Lake Families PAC and infused a lot of resources and finances into the school board elections, and really started the national trend of infiltrating school boards, banning books, the anti-CRT movement, et cetera. So it's kind of an unfortunate full circle moment for me to be, involved in this case.
Can you talk about how you're now having to interact with Judge Tim O'Hare with this case and with partnerships?
Sure, I
with
will
LULAC
preface this by saying I am not an attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project. I am on the communications team, but our team has decided to represent Alberto's organization and the League of Women Voters of Tarrant County in a lawsuit against Tarrant County Judge Tim O'Hare and the Tarrant County Commissioners Court for their passage of a racially discriminatory new precinct map, which Alberto is the plaintiff in, so I will let him share more.
Well, of course, when we were made aware of this, it was really concerning, and not surprising. Tim O'Hare and some of the other people on the County Commissioners Court have not been a friend to, I think, the minority community at all. But when this started happening, that we found out they wanted to, what we felt was illegal redistricting, we got really concerned, and in fact, I sent a letter to all the county commissioners saying that we felt it was wrong and that this would hurt our community. I mean, to me, I think it harkens back to the time when there were we couldn't get any minorities elected to any city office when they had at-large elections, and so I was reminded of that because I and others were involved in fighting against that, and here we are again. And so I sent a letter to the county commissioners expressing my concern and asking them not to do that, but the only county commissioner that responded was Ms. Simmons, and she, of course, supported what I was saying, but all the others ignored the letter and never responded. So we were really happy when the Texas Civil Rights Project decided to come in and help our efforts try to fight this illegal scheme that they've put in place to try to disenfranchise our communities.
A lot of our listeners have kept up with that, even seen or spoke or was some type of active in that piece. A lot of us think, all of this is already done. We're kind of stuck. What brings us here today of why it's important for us to continue to discuss what happened back, earlier this year?
Yeah, I would say that the fight is not over, and Texas Civil Rights Project for sure will not give up defending the rights of Tarrant County voters. Essentially, the maps were voted on in June. In August, we filed the lawsuit. September, we filed a temporary injunction to at least hopefully keep the new maps from coming into effect until after the 2026 election. There was a hearing in September on the 25th, where Alberto and many other community members spoke out against the new maps. Unfortunately, the judge denied that temporary injunction, which brings us to this week, where there's going to be another hearing on the 19th, where the defendants will argue that the plaintiffs and Tarrant County voters do not have a claim for this case.
Can I make one correction on that last hearing? I actually didn't speak. I was there along with other community members, but Janet with the League of Women Voters spoke and spoke quite well, and defending our position to stop this illegal redistricting.
Yeah. I think another important speaker at that hearing was a political science expert from Rice University, who had studied the maps and the data, and it showed that race was a bigger predictor than partisanship in terms of where people were moved in the maps. And it was clearly silencing Black and Latino voters.
Yeah, which all the way through they were claiming this is all just partisan. This is all just partisan, trying to stay away from that aspect of it. But clearly, if demographers are looking at data and clearly pointing out that race is a bigger predictor of how these were moved, not to mention the fact that there were 6 maps that they took through a sham of a process of public hearings and then brought in a 7th map after all those hearings were held and then adopted map 7.
Within 1 week, I think they introduced that new map.
What I find also interesting, Alberto, I'd love to get your kind of take on, like, the majority of the court is minority, and yet we're having this difficulty. What as someone who you participate in LULAC, you've been speaking in the community, what's that symbolism or conflict of how can this happen at a time when the seat is the dais is majority minority?
Republican politics, if I'm being honest, recently has really driven a wedge between a lot of communities, and even in the Hispanic community. And I know that the commissioner that happens to be Hispanic on the board right now has, for the most part, decided that, I don't know if for financial reasons, because that's where he gets his support. Money dictates a lot of decisions in our communities, and so I will say this about him, is that when they were trying to remove or delete Cesar Chavez holiday, he did vote not to do that. But on this issue, clearly, because he feels like maybe his seat will stay safe if with the new redistricting. I don't know, but it is disappointing. But at the same time, we all can have to make a choice in life as to which direction we want to go, and he's made his.
And and it was a choice to also represent less Latinos in his districts. He got a decrease of representing people who look like him, which I found that very fascinating. Stephanie, I would love to get a context from you. You said you participated in some work around your alumni where you went to high school. So you've seen kind of the breadcrumbs early of what's happening even before he got in a judge seat. Can you give us a past, present, and what you're fearful for maybe in the future if this kind of behavior continues and the judge gets its way?
I think Southlake and what happened at Carroll ISD was really indicative of the response from people in power when they feel like their time in power or as a majority is perhaps nearing an end, and an almost desperate attempt then to grab as much power as they can while they have it. And the shocking thing, I think, in Southlake was how quickly they were able to use narrative to perpetuate their political aspirations. And one of the things that was challenging in Southlake that we see now is this fear of diversity, equity, inclusion, the conflation of critical race theory as something that was being taught in elementary or middle schools. But that misinformation and the ability to galvanize their community around that is happening, I think, now with redistricting, with election misinformation. And they've seen the power of when they can control the narrative and they can get people out to vote, it can have really dire long-term consequences that don't stay in Southlake or in Tarrant County or in Texas. Everything that's happening in the state right now is going to be precedent for what happens on a national level. We are a laboratory of oppression and silencing of communities of color.
Is the way of fighting back on that is like they're trying to see like how we will react as people. Like it's really up to us as people to stand out more. And I guess we had, I think 120, 30 people spoke at public comments for the racial gerrymander, and the vote still passed. What kind of activation do you feel needs to happen where maybe it resonates more that we can take this down?
Yeah, well, so Texas Civil Rights Project, we are both a legal and an advocacy organization because I think there's a limitation to what we can do in the courts, and that advocacy piece and galvanizing the community is really significant. And so regardless of what happens in terms of litigation, I think people being aware of what's at stake and feeling empowered to use their voice and for it to be an example. We luckily have things like social media and the media coverage that can amplify people's voices and experiences beyond the courtroom, and it's more important than ever for people to show up to these hearings, to the meetings, and express their beliefs. And I think a really good example of where people's voices did have an impact locally, just this month in the city of Dallas with the 287G agreements and the question of Dallas Police Department potentially getting in partnership with ICE. The community came out in droves, and the city council voted unanimously to postpone that motion and prevent that partnership from happening. So the narrative is shifting, and it's more critical than ever for people to use their voice while we can.
And I think there's a current situation right now about how our elections are going to be held going forward. And I haven't seen any actual news articles about this yet, but I've seen some conversation on social media about a proposal from the GOP side that all of our elections require people to vote in their precincts only, and that there's some push to count ballots by hand, which all seems like going backwards. And I can't imagine how that would be carried out successfully in a county as large as our county. Fact that, and still people are confused about where they can vote. This last election, I had people saying, I think that on election day you have to go to your precinct. And I'm like, no, you can go anywhere.
No. And with the new precinct maps that have moved people.
Exactly. The numbers don't even line up anymore.
But yeah, this is just an example of, the misinformation around elections, and it's going to make it not only more difficult for people of color to vote, but just people in Tarrant County in general. And it's going to be costly. It's going to be time consuming. And the studies have shown that the hand counted ballots are less accurate than the machine. So it is a disservice to any Tarrant County voter to support this.
And I don't know if there's some kind of public meeting going to happen about this. I think it's up to the elections committee, which is made up of the GOP chair, the Democratic chair, the county judge, the sheriff, and the elections administrator. So again, like they did at the county level with the redistricting, if they have the votes, they can go ahead no matter what is said in any kind of public meeting. But I don't think they should be able to do it quietly without any spotlight on the fact that this is what they are trying to do.
And that's what our lawsuit is really saying, is that this happened in a very secretive, opaque process. And again, yes, if they are allowed to get away with it in this case, it's going to continue to set a precedent for future decisions.
Alberto, you said you've basically lived in Fort Worth now for over 30 years.
Yes.
So you've seen the change in politics in Texas since the beginning. If you could go back to when you kind of started in Fort Worth, what has changed compared to how politics was in the past to what you're seeing happening today, and what you maybe be afraid for future generations?
Well, one thing that I see is we elected Sal Espino to represent the north side. I believe he was a first Hispanic to represent from the north side. Or actually, I think he may have been the second one. But it took years to finally get, somebody that knows our community and maybe looks like us to represent that area that many of our community people live in. Now we have Janet Martinez, and we are also very thankful for that. And so anyway, and of course we have Carlos Flores. We've made some strides in getting people elected that again know our community and also understand what we're about and what our needs are, and in some cases look like us, and that's really important. And I go back to when they had the at-large elections. I remember I did training with late Willie Velasquez at the Southwest Photo Project, and he would run campaigns to register people to vote all the time, and then people would say, you know what, it doesn't matter if I vote or not, we never get our candidate elected anyway. And so we started looking at that and analyzing and said, you know what, they're right. And so, yeah, if anybody named Garcia was on the ballot, he was not going to get elected in Fort Worth or a city like this, you know, with at-large elections. And so we went to district elections. It made it better for our community to get representation that we can feel comfortable with. But if with this redistricting that's happening now, I fear that we're going to go back to those times again.
At the city level, you all were instrumental in advocating for adding additional city council districts as well. And that was also an effort to increase minority representation on the council. So to your point about Jeanette Martinez now representing District 11, that was a Hispanic Opportunity District. And so that was over many years as well. Like since the last census in 2020, all the way to, 2010. I think you guys started working on that in 2010. And then we're finally successful with the council adding those additional council districts.
Yes, the United Hispanic Council did a lot of work in that area, and I point to Fernando Flores and Juan Perez from that area as well. In fact, we recognized them last year in our Latino Legacy Awards for the work they did to make that happen.
Right.
And again, nothing happens by accident, so it takes a lot of work. And so again, all these things that are forces that seem to be, mounting up against our communities, we should be fearful, but not to the point where we don't take any action. Yeah. That should be a call to action.
Yeah, I would love to, because I think about all that effort you put in, but I would also then look at, we think about this fight for racial gerrymandered maps or DEI at the city hall. It seems to be the Latinos who end up voting with the establishment of that vote. And so it's to me, I feel like there's this opportunity for black and brown coalition building that is currently not there, in the sense of things that have both Carlos Flores and Jeanette Martinez have voted on have been things that were against things that we are also fighting for at the county level. And so I guess I would think about what is your thoughts on how we can build more black and brown coalition building? Because even though we do have a Hispanic Opportunity District, I would question, has anything changed in the way we vote and represent in the city? Has votes changed as if we had 9 to 11, even though now we have more Latinos on the council? And I think that's a thing that I think we have to ask ourselves about our Latino leadership.
Well, I will say that I did speak to both Carlos and Jeanette about this, because when you look at it from the outside looking in, it really did. I think a lot of people in our community were disappointed that they didn't vote with the other minority members. But after talking to them, and they explained, the large amounts of money that were going to be lost because if we voted to keep DEI in the language, because there's other ways to do things to basically do the same thing without actually calling it that. And my understanding was that a lot of these programs would continue that helped the community. However, maybe the language was going to change. And I will add, though, we're not in normal times. There's clearly nothing that's clearly black or white. And I think that I think we have to try not to overreact until we actually analyze, some of these votes.
I mean, going back to what I said earlier about people in power, fearing losing power, minorities aren't actually a minority anymore. Yeah. If you put every, community of color together, we hold a lot of power, and they know that they hold onto their power by dividing us. Yeah. It's a very, intentional pattern that has happened throughout history. And unfortunately, everything is tied together. This fight to not teach us our accurate history keeps us divided and keeps us from seeing all of the common ways that we've been oppressed in similar veins, and also histories and stories about when we have come together in solidarity and achieved great things. So I think it's going to be public education and telling stories and history outside of the classroom to show people that we do have more opportunities than we know when we come together.
I do want to add that this lawsuit that we're involved with is not just because for the Hispanic community. It's for all minorities, and all our communities of color. So I think, in a sense, we are working together, and we will continue working together to better the city.
Yeah, because money aside, I totally get how the DEI might make sense from a money side, but they also voted for reducing public comments. That has no money involved, and so these are things that continue to happen. And I say this, as another Latino, in the sense of, we're 35% of the city. We're the largest minority population, and I do think, how do Latinos move in 2026 and 2028 election is going to be the answer. And like you guys know, and Stephanie, how you put it is, we're the largest swing county in America. We are the battleground of our democracy. And if Fort Worth is 47% of the county, we are the front lines. And that means that city council is the front lines of what you said, what gets passed as a test. And then it goes on to that county level. And to me, it's, where are the bold Latino leaders aligning with the black leaders like Elisa Simmons, who reported back, or Chris Nettles, who they did agree on the gerrymander and the racial resolution. That was one where I think we did get aligned. And I think it's that part that I think is also very important if we're going to be able to get bold, because you just said we're not in normal times, and it feels like, what does bold look like, and how do we keep bold for our politicians, but also for our peers, our community members? Because now we're talking about elections where we have to vote in our own precinct potentially. And when do we start standing on these chairs and really flipping tables? That's what I'm at in this point. And I think history, as we talked about with Cesar Chavez, and that I think about, how do we start activating black and brown people to really get more involved in these fights?
So here at the podcast, we typically try to give people direction and how they can stay involved and what they can do and actions that they can take. So is there anything that can be done, not just in regards to the lawsuit, or what we have going forward with this situation?
Yeah, I think after the hearing, regardless of the decision, we are going to be sharing our statement and what people can do to support next. We will not be giving up the fight despite what might happen, and it's going to be more important than ever for people to be really loud about their rights and what they want for their community. So following the LULAC Council, the League of Women Voters of Tarrant County, and Texas Civil Rights Project for continued updates in what could be a longer journey.
Alberto, am I also understanding that LULAC's having their national convention here in Fort Worth coming up too?
Yeah, that's coming up. It's I think the third week in June, and so obviously that's one of the concerns that I had going forward, that we should look like a welcoming city, forward-thinking city, and I'm afraid that all this that's going on is not going to lend itself to that image at all. And so we'll have to see how things proceed going forward. We may have to issue something, some caution to our visitors before they come in. Well, and as far as what we can do and together, I certainly would invite people to get involved with our organization, our LULAC Council. You can reach out to me text me at 817-797-4015 and let me know you're interested. And we need to mobilize our community. The time is now. And so if you're interested in doing anything or taking any kind of action or want to find out how you can help, please contact me. And and we'll certainly get you information. The other thing you can do is check us out at holatexas.us. That's a community publication that I publish here in Tarrant County and in Dallas County, and we also have an online edition that comes out every Friday called El Weekender. So we're always giving out information that is of value to our community, and also information that may hurt our community. We want people to be informed, and we'll at times we also ask people to take action. So check us out at holatexas.us.
Stephanie, where can we go also to learn about the Texas Civil Rights Project and the things you guys are working on across the state?
Our website is txcivilrightsproject.org. But what I would say is, especially on our website, there's a section on voting rights, and it has a lot of guides on what is a county commissioners court and why does it matter. You can also follow us on Instagram at Texas TX Civil Rights.
Well, Alberto, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining the 817 podcast. We wish you all the
us.
best on the 19th as you continue to fight for the people of Tarrant County.
Well, we certainly thank you for inviting us out. We appreciate that, and I think we failed to say that initially, so thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, so that was a powerful interview, in my opinion, even though they were walking a tightrope like lawyers do, and when you're in a case. But what we were talking about, it was some serious stuff. What did y'all think?
Yeah, I think going back with all that history is important, because these are some people that have been working in this arena for a really long time and have seen the slow evolution. And in some cases are satisfied with that slow evolution. And I think we are here to say that we need to be bolder and stronger in some of these things. But they are on the front lines of the fight for the redistricting currently. So it's an important thing to keep in the forefront of people's minds when we have these discussions.
Yeah. And I think beyond being bolder, it's also a matter of not taking people always at their word. So something that Alberto was saying is he was repeating Carlos Flores' excuse that, you know, if we cut DEI, we can still keep these programs in different departments. We can still keep all of these employees and just move them to different departments. And it sounds like he took that as being true, but I want to say, like, based on all my conversations with city employees, I can tell you that is not true. That a lot of these city employees, they got moved to departments that have nothing to do with what they signed up for, and a lot of them are quitting. And a lot of the programs that the city thought that they could continue in different areas, they're not. So like last week, the Movies That Matter series, the city no longer has anything to do with it, and they've attempted to offload it onto TCU, but TCU didn't sign up to do that. So the fate of it is uncertain. And a lot of the other programs that the Diversity and Inclusion Department was doing, very
relying on
uncertain.
TCU to save DEI is already a problem.
Exactly.
That's when you know you had no hope.
Exactly.
Well, that and the other situation is when you name things amorphous things that don't label them correctly, how are people supposed to know that that's where you go to get that information?
Exactly. And none of this was set up to exist in perpetuity. And so I think by like offloading it, hiding it, it makes it easier for it to disappear forever, where we never notice that it's gone.
Yeah. So. Well, I think we're going to talk about short story 1, which would have been the big story if we didn't have the interview, but the interview allowed us to talk about some of it because we had Texas Civil Rights Project here, which deals with this kind of stuff all the time. So to get their input, how, you know, basically what we've been saying, how Tarrant County is the petri dish of like what is possible, that then scales out to the country. And one of those things that are being tested right now in the back rooms of Tarrant GOP is trying to go to counting ballots by hand and moving it where voters can only vote in their actual precinct that they reside in. Bud Kennedy kind of brought that to light over the weekend, and I think a lot of our peers and people in community have been discussing what this means. How bad is this? Does it just impact them? Can this impact us? But then Allison Campolo, the chair of the Tarrant Democratic Party, did some Q&A on Facebook and socials explaining how she's navigating it. So after reading it, what did you guys see or think?
So apparently there was an unnamed source from the GOP that announced that they were going to move forward in the elections in March, the preliminaries in March, with this, what you just described, precinct-only voting when we've had county-wide voting for a number of years now, and counting ballots by hand. But this has been done in some very much smaller counties than our county, and it's been a cluster. It's just a super bad idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even so right now you can vote in any polling location, but because they've cut so many polling locations, even in the runoff, we saw just chaos of people not knowing where their voting location is or where a voting location is because they were used to their closest one. And so now if we switch from that, which was already chaotic, to a precinct level one, which that already doesn't make any sense to me. If Tim O'Hare is bragging about how much money they saved by cutting all these polling locations, to have a polling location in every precinct will cost a fortune compared to what we were dealing with. And also the Tarrant County Elections Administration doesn't have enough polling machines to support all of those locations. So this would cost a ton of money and cause mass confusion. The people like finding and getting to their polling location in time without all of this heads up would mean like an enormous decrease in voter turnout. And then also to count the ballots by hand.
And you have to get it in 24 hours. It's dang near impossible.
Exactly. So
there's
you're
a
already
time limit by which you have to have those counts completed, and doing that by hand is crazy. And there's so many more errors in hand counting than there is in machine counting.
And that's just counting once, but having to count all of it within 24 hours, you're not going to have enough time to double check your work and make sure it's right. And also, if you want to rig an election, the best way to do it is either by hand counting or just unsecured digital voting. And we have secured digital voting through our current system because it's a paper ballot that can be double checked, but also it's the electric machine that is not attached to the internet. It's super secure. Like, we have it set up this way for a reason, because it is safe and secure. And to go to hand ballots is just dooming us for failure. I think what the challenge is, like, we're still thinking in logical, right things to do.
And Tim O'Hare is showing that I'm going to be able to get away with doing illogical things. I mean, and I think that is what this like racial gerrymander case, where, you know, they're not, I believe this case isn't that confident that it could win fully, and they're going to get away with throwing in a map 7, and he got away with voting. He reduced election sites by half, picking very core spots that don't have them.
He took voting locations out of black and brown neighborhoods inside the loop and put them in white neighborhoods outside the loop.
And so it's like, what do we do when they continue to get away with illogical stuff? Because the one part of Allison Campolo's Q&A that she put is, how could the Republicans decide this if they wanted to? No, it wasn't that one. It was, what would happen theoretically if the Republicans did decide to do precinct level voting? Her answer was, because of the way the laws are written, the Democrats would have to have precinct voting also, which is an absolutely terrible reality. We don't have to face due to the chaos, cost, and confusion it would cause. If this happens, I will be fighting it tooth and nail because of the rampant voter disenfranchisement of people that would occur. The only good news is that eventually, that even if Republicans decide to do the paper ballots and hand counting, the Democrats could keep voting machines for the primary election. But we're talking about fighting the ability to, a popular thought of us being able to vote at any voting poll across the county being taken away from us.
Yep, making it easy and accessible.
In a crucial elections of 2026.
For all of you who were unaware that voting locations were decreased in the last election that we had, which was just constitutional amendments, and if you live in Senate District 9, you had a person to vote for, and you didn't pay attention that the county commissioners had done that, and you just got mad when you saw that your voting location wasn't there. This is the time to pay attention. If they want to go forward with this, I think they have the votes to do it, similarly to the county commissioners, because the people who make these decisions are the head of the GOP, the head of the Democratic Party, the county judge, the sheriff, and the elections administrator. So unless a couple of those people go along with Allison Campolo, they can just do this. Yeah. But they should not be able to do this without us all bringing it to light and saying that it's the wrong thing to do.
I do also want to point out that Tarrant County used to have a nationally recognized elections administrator. He was known for how great a job he did at transparency, at security, about making sure voting was as accessible as possible. And one of the first things Tim O'Hare did when he became a county judge was to make that guy's life miserable. Like, the same month that he was written up in the New York Times for what an amazing job he was doing was the same month that he quit because Tim O'Hare made it so miserable. And then when they opened up applications, the only people who applied were Tim O'Hare sycophants, because any sane person knew that having to deal with him would make the job absolutely miserable. And so that's my worry, is that our elections administrator right now, as much as on paper they might want to appear neutral, they're absolutely not. We saw in the redistricting effort when Ann was saying, like, when he was giving a presentation, that he's kind of just doing what Tim O'Hare wants him to do.
Yeah, when they were talking about cutting down the polling locations, his reasons for doing that were just basically save money, not based on, trying to get out more people to vote, which you would think an elections administrator would want to increase the ability for people to vote.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more you guys want to go into this. I know Dallas County GOP is also pushing the hand count. This kind of came out in October. It made the Texas Tribune as well. It did talk about the cost that this will be. It would be more than $1 million is what they estimated when they tried to do this in 2023. So
isn't it $1 million that Tim O'Hare was
saved.
bragging to save?
And so the same, and we're talking about Clint Ludwig when you guys talk about the election administrator.
He's the current election administrator.
Okay.
Previous one was Hyder Garcia, I believe.
And
he's in Dallas.
Yeah.
What?
But I'm also...
I didn't know he moved there.
Yeah, but I also believe he's... Yeah, we'll see. But
there's a whole podcast series that he was interviewed on where he was so transparent that even the people who were on the GOP side that were questioning whether these were fair elections and whether there was election fraud going on, he convinced them.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I saw that. Hyder Garcia resigns as Dallas County elections chief in August. So he's no longer there as well. So
interesting.
It is.
Well, that is one thing, is that I'm curious how this will play out, considering that the Republicans have been so intense on, quote, election integrity, and what they mean by that is, like, they're using that as an excuse to get through some voter suppression measures. But what it has accidentally created is a group of people who are obsessed with making sure elections are secure. And if they're doing hand-counted ballots, that's not secure at all. So I'm hoping that this absolutely backfires in their face, because a lot of those elections integrity people who aren't politicians, they actually care. And so they're going to look at this and be like, oh, this is just making it worse, and we're going to not do that. I mean, that's a lot of hope to put in conservatives.
Yes. You're like, to me, it's like, if we have a Taylor Remmett race coming up, and he was 3,000 votes away from an outright, these efforts can be the thing where if Leah Wamsgans wins by a couple thousand, and you have the racial gerrymanders, you have this election crap. Like, if this stuff kind of starts playing out, the fear of voting, right? The threats of, people being afraid to go out and do things as black and brown people. Like, this is the only way to beat this right now is either uprising or somehow we continue to miraculously outvote them through all these hoops.
I mean, that we can do. The numbers are on our side, but the problem is that's why they're putting through all these voter suppression efforts. I mean, Stephanie mentioned it in the interview that this is the death knell. This is in their last dying breath as they're gripping onto power, is they have to get away with as many things as possible to rig it in their favor.
Yeah. And that's a perfect way, I think, to kind of like wrap this section up. It's like, that's what they're trying to do. And where I'm afraid is that it works for them to stay in power. And is it too risky for us to just, we'll see you at the polls, and it ends up being short? And to like really amplify the concern here is like the next Tarrant GOP meeting that's happening is at Mercy Culture, their East Meadowbrook campus.
And this is the one where they're figuring out who their new Tarrant County GOP chair is. So this will be the person who's a part of that vote for whether or not this happens.
Yeah. So our win last week was that Beau French was stepping down as the head of the GOP.
Yay.
And we have a loss this week in that arena, but he stepped down in the middle of the filing period. So they're having this meeting on the 22nd, I believe, to elect a new person. And as EJ said, they're holding that at a Mercy Culture Church location. And they also have started online training for Christians to run for office.
Yes.
And this is going national because Nate Scatzline has stepped down from his role and now is taking a national role on kind of educating and informing and getting more Christian nationalists to run for office.
Yep.
So sitting back and just waiting to see if voting works out in our favor is not going to work out.
And we said it in the with the two guests. Tarrant County is the battleground for our democracy. We've been saying it a million times, and Fort Worth is the front lines. This is a hand-to-hand combat. We got to move because Christian nationalism scaling is happening right here in Mercy Culture. They're going to be the university to get candidates, which you saw the impact and power they had in the mayoral race, where they ran an elder with no government experience to get fourth in a mayoral election. So they have real power and a real surge of juice. Plus now Scatzline's hanging out with Trump on some religious council.
Faith advisory board.
And the Tarrant GOP is meeting at Mercy Culture, where a lot of these people go to church. So it's like your daddy's Republican from back in the day
don't exist anymore.
Does not exist. Anyone who tries to be a Republican in Fort Worth, you are operated and being pimped by the Mercy Culture. And so I think for me, like, that is why I think
we show up and speak at council and we're called the partisan problem.
Yes. And that's
we're not the partisan problem.
And that's where I think short story number 2 is about Mayor Parker and the establishment starting to show up at public comments, and Mayor Parker she just did a Texas Tribune article, which is important. She went down to I think they call it TribFest and talked with Evan Smith. And this is important because the last time she really did this was like in 2022 when she had that like a little bit more moderate-y article. But she's also coming on like some podcasts. She's doing more podcasts. She's getting the establishment out in public comments. And the general take for me is she is saying, oh, we're just trying to deal with all the left and the right. 80% of us, are all on the same page, and it's the far left and the far right harming Fort Worth.
What far left?
Exactly. She's turning the people who are showing up at public comments and people like us who have been engaged and informed and seeing what's happening, and now trying to use us as the same thing as what ate up her party. Mm-hmm. And we cannot let her rhetoric or the establishment that wants to normalize what Fort Worth has been to now turn what we all been doing as the same as Mercy Culture or the left.
Exactly. You have far-right extremists who are Christian nationalists, white supremacists doing their thing. And then you have people advocating for community input and fighting for black and brown residents and immigrant neighbors. Those aren't opposite ends of the same thing. You got you got the crazies over here, and you have people fighting for sanity and good government and representation by the people. Like, we're not the far left. Yeah. We're not extremists. I think we did it in our What is a Progressive episode. If you ask any random person on the street how they feel about the things we're fighting for, odds are they agree.
They're quality of life things.
Exactly.
I mean, because the point she made on the section about partisan politics, that she says she's fortunate as mayor that she doesn't have to run attached to a party. When she was elected in 2021 to be mayor, she wanted to appeal to both sides, and that was a very liberating place to be in the state of politics today. But I don't think it is a liberating place to be because
and also she's not even there.
The right has dragged everything so far to the right that stuff that was common sense, quality of life things are now being labeled in a negative way.
They're
and
labeled
causing
partisan.
the partisan stuff. And so those of us who are just standing up and saying, these are not partisan things, these are just quality of life things that we should be providing in a city so that people have quality of life, healthcare, their infant mortality and maternal mortality rates, all the things that are important to her are things that other people are labeling as woke things that your government should not be doing for you.
Yeah. And to me, as much as Nate Scatsline or Judge Tim O'Hare, like, yes, they are extremists, but it's the establishment that I don't think Fort Worth wants anymore. And it's the establishment that should be the ones getting in trouble for where we are. And what the establishment is trying to do is say, oh, we're not the right, and that left is also the problem, and we're the good guys. No, the establishment has enabled this extremism. And at the end of the day, these extremists do vote for the Republicans. And because of that, it has allowed, they are the gift wrap around it that allows to package it in a way, because I do believe in this point, is that they get us distracted by the culture wars because of the economic exploitation of billionaires and oligarchs. And what Mayor Parker and all the Mike Berrys and the Ross Perot Jr.'s and all that stuff, what they represent is the exploitation of the economy of Fort Worth. And if we can be distracted by Judge Tim O'Hare or minimize people coming to stand, they are trying to make sure we don't call out that, which is the real problem. And they're trying to allow their little game to be saved. So what we are doing is showing you that people vote. And if we're getting 60, 90 people to come to public comments or thousands of people to write letters, is that these are Fort Worth votes. And when you look at Taylor Remett's election, and if you look at those that were in Northside, if you look at those that were in Fort Worth, those went double-digit Dem. And that shows that that little establishment is now trying all their best to try to say, oh no, everybody likes who we are today. And they start bringing people to public comments.
Yes.
What was your thoughts on that?
I don't know if we've all talked about this quite a bit, but I think we've forgotten to talk about it on the podcast. But 2 public comments ago, it was the first time that's ever happened where the kinds of presentations you would normally hear at work session, where it's organizations who've partnered with the city giving updates, they were suddenly showing up. Leah King and T3 and all these people were showing up to thank Mattie Parker, to thank the city, to swear fealty to the mayor for all the gifts she's bestowed upon the city, because she knew that people were coming to hold her accountable and critique her. And I thought that was just going to be a one-off, because she knew that people were coming to target her specifically, demanding apology, that she apologized to Patrice. But then the last public comment, it happened again. I think this time Ann kept a list. There were 11 organizations that came specifically to thank Mattie Parker in the city for all the money that they've given them. And
that was the first one, because Ann wasn't there the second one.
But I watched it online and kept track.
And you only got 11? You only got to 11? Because I feel like it was 2 hours.
I sent you a list.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first time there was a lot more. I think it was closer to 20.
No. I think to me, how I look at it is the one where you talked about the art center, which is going to be our short story number 3, is they were 75% of the public comments that day. And we went to 2 hours on that public comments. I genuinely believe it was more because the week before and all this stuff, we got in there, we broke that shit up. And because that day that we were talking with Patrice Jones and Mindio came and everybody came, and it was the ending. We called it on this podcast the ending of the Fort Worth way. This last public comments was, let's make sure to show them that it's not the end of the Fort Worth way. I think they showed up big on this one because they're trying to say, oh no, we are still here, but I don't know how long it's going to last. And let's be clear, we are working on other things, and we didn't even prioritize this public comment because so much of other things that are happening, like the TEA takeover, which those are having full houses, right? What's going on with Arlington and their jurisdictions around sexual discrimination. We've been working on a lot of other things. And so it was kind of funny. They brought their hammer this month, And I'm interested to see how long does it continue.
It was after the previous one where the news came out. The police report showed that Patrice had nothing to do with the casket, and so I think they were expecting even more people demanding apology. And there were people who were like calling her out for her lying and defaming Patrice in public. And so I think that's why she was more scared and like asked more organizations to come and thank her specifically. And I've talked to some people who, in so many words, were voluntold to be there.
Same, 100%. Mm-hmm. Everyone likes to minimize the people and like the people showing up. And people think like, oh, does it really matter? You know, do they even think they know who you guys are? Or like, why does this matter? I'm like, guys, when you know that you have Mike Berry, Pete Guerin.
For context,
Mike Berry, the CEO of Hillwood, you know, billionaire, you know, Alliance, Texas. Pete Guerin, Sid Richardson Foundation. D. Kelly, who was supposed to be the mayor but stepped out and they picked Mattie, the lawyer, you know, for the Basses. When you have those people sitting their butts in the seats for a public comment meeting, there is no vote.
They've never showed up to before.
There is no vote happening. You can't tell me that we are not scaring the shit out of their little establishment game, and you keep telling me this doesn't fucking matter. I don't know how more you cannot say that, because why are they wasting their great old time sitting there then? Several of the council members have said and pushed the mayor, we've never done this before. Why are all these people speaking at public comments when it's supposed to be for the public? This usually happens at working session. They've come into me, oh yeah, they're doing all of this on purpose. Council members. And so we got to understand the people who listen to the 817 pod, the people who organize, and we need larger alliances. It can't just be the 817 gather. It can't just be our little crew. It needs to be an alliance where there's 150 people in 2026 working together, making moves. And who's going to be that 150? I think we're bringing 40 to 60, but we need other people to believe in what's happening and bring another 40, another 20. And that's when I think we tip this whole thing over, and we can talk a Fort Worth that is operated and ran for the people.
I mean, I just think that there's an over-reliance on nonprofits. And so this is brought to light for me to see who's doing the actual work that I think our government should definitely have a bigger role in. What we've done in Fort Worth, and we call it the Fort Worth Way, we call it the public-private partnership, is to oft some of these things that if they were being managed and run and were part of our tax dollars, we could have more consistency and assurance that they would continue. When you foist it off on nonprofits and foundations that are funding those, and then some of them are also funded by government grants and things like that, you run the risk of those things not having the support they need in the future. And when you put things that people need to live their lives, like feeding them and housing them, into these nonprofit spheres, I worry that that's not going to be there someday. And that social safety net that government has provided in the past will not be there in the future. And many of these young people these days have never seen that public safety net.
Well, that's a perfect transition into short story number 3, talking about not properly funding nonprofits that the city partners with. I have an important update about the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. So I feel like almost anyone that knows me knows I run Support Fort Worth Art, which is an arts advocacy organization that got started to preserve the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. So in 2023, the city looked into redeveloping the building and was a part of the 1300 Gendy task force that first looked into it. And the city took in redevelopment proposals. They only showed 2 to the public. They were both awful for different reasons. One of them wanted to build a 13-story hotel, and everyone laughed because it was so stupid. The city rejected both proposals, and that was in 2023. And they said they were going to restart the process, and then nothing happened. And then because the city sent such a large signal that they had no faith in the building and no clear future, a lot of the donors that donated to Arts Fort Worth to help make up for the enormous gap that the city left in not properly funding or supporting the building.
That they own,
yes. And also, it's the largest community art space in the state. and it has been the incubator of almost every theater in town. Almost every artist in town has gotten opportunities there. It's so important. We should all have a lot of pride in it. But because the city had underfunded it for so long, Arts Fort Worth could not keep maintaining the building, or else they would risk losing the public art program, losing the grants that helped keep all of the arts ecosystem going. So that was very tragic, and it put the building back in the hands of the city, specifically the city's property management department. And it's just been sitting empty since July 2024. I was one of the last members of the public in the building. This year, we have all been waiting patiently for anything to happen with it, and I got news that something great was going to happen. That TCU, they want to rebuild their theaters and their galleries, and they don't have anywhere for their theater department, for their visual art department to go. And they're like, where are we going to find enough space for all of these students? Community Arts Center's sitting there empty. And so all of this year, they've been working out a deal with the city's property management department to take over the building temporarily and fix the things that need fixing. Like the HVAC went out, and that's like $200,000 to fix. How are you going to get that money? TCU has money. So this is a huge help for the city, for TCU, and it makes sure the building is occupied, it's useful, that it doesn't fall into disrepair. I literally couldn't imagine a better situation until we get the redevelopment process going and get the Community Arts Center back that we deserve. A few weeks ago, when TCU was on their way to sign the last bit of paperwork, property management told them, never mind. They backed out of the deal with no real warning or good excuse. And I've heard that some of the professors at TCU believe that it might be because if any more money or attention is put into the building, that the city is worried that it will encourage artists to keep fighting for the building, which is insane because everyone is so ready to fight for that building, and we've been nice this whole year, patiently waiting for the city to do what they said. They kept moving the goalposts, saying, well, first we need to hire a city manager. We got Jay Chapa. Then they said we need to hire a head of economic development, because in the first redevelopment proposal, they were a key part of it. All of those things have happened, and they keep moving the goalposts and it really feels like something nefarious is planned for the building. I know that at one point they had a meeting with Taylor Sheridan about the building, and nothing seems to have come of it. And I know that some people just assume it'll be taken over as a hotel for Dickies Arena. But like, Mattie Parker promised that nothing would happen to that building that doesn't continue it as a community art space. And like Macy Hill, as much as she loves developers, she agreed that the proposals that we've seen were bad. So I think we need to insist on an update at the very minimum, because that was one of the very first task force that I agreed to serve on after rolling off of council. And I did so without asking a whole lot of questions, and then found it to be a pretty torturous process because I felt like I was one of the few people that was there to try to ensure that it remain a cultural arts center for the entire city. A lot of the other people on there were people who have public-private partnerships with the city. So it seemed like it was tailor-made to get to that answer. Yeah. And Anne was, I think, the only person who was actively meeting with artists and arts advocates about just trying to learn more about what their needs were, what they would like to see there, all of those things. That's where me and Anne first became friends. Is it? I think. Well, I knew of you, but that was the first time we sat and hung out. Okay.
Well, I vote, when you guys are old and wrinkly and retire of life and we need to leave y'all's legacy, I think there should be a Zeta trail lane on the transit, and Wesley needs a statue in front of the building. The two Wesleys, whatever. You guys, something Wesley has to be a part of the legacy. The Community Arts Center. Yeah, the Community Arts Center. Absolutely.
So yeah, I know that because there's not news there hasn't been an article, and it's been hard getting TCU to talk openly about it because they're still navigating this. But my plan is on December 2nd, which now we know is the last public comment. I'm going to be there. I want every artist, art supporter, arts advocate to come to public comment and demand updates, demand that we restart the redevelopment process. And at the bare minimum, help make sure that TCU takes over this building so it doesn't fall into any more disrepair.
And one would hope that all of the comments that came out of those public meetings would be front of mind for everyone making these decisions, because it was clear what the community wanted. And we don't need to put them through that torture again to make them come down there and plead their case and describe all the wonderful things that happened in that building.
I think
Elected
we do.
officials have all been through that. They all agreed.
But
Everybody was in agreement.
Yes, I agree. You, at that first meeting, you saw Leonard Firestone, like, he was so changed that he realized, oh,
It's so
shit.
weird. I miss Leonard Firestone.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
Macy Hill. Gosh.
But that is my concern, is that we do have new people on council that weren't there during that whole fight. Like, Jeanette was still campaigning at that time. That Mia Hall, Deborah Peoples.
That's true. That's true. There's recordings of all that, though, right? Those meetings are recorded somewhere.
With as busy as you think they are, do you think they're going to sit and watch 7 hours of people fight for the community arts center? I would hope that they would.
So,
but we need to keep not only do we need to keep the fight going, we need the city to see that the fight is still going. That is one of the best things that the city has, and we need to get it back.
Brother, here's where okay, one, guys, I was like trying not to make this the short story 3, but I understand that it needed to be the short story 3 because there's not being enough journalism reported on this. But you're also a precinct chair. And I believe, like, I think the ask is I think every person who listens to the pod and every person who needs to get ready for 2026 is they need to show up to public comments on December 2nd.
Yeah.
Because I would argue, like, this voting stuff is pretty important.
Absolutely.
So I think it's like a buffet, unfortunately.
There's a multitude of things you can come speak on.
A buffet of things that you can come to December 2nd. I'm going to make sure I speak on the Community Arts Center just to show you I love you. And then, though, you can speak about this, if the reduction of voting spots in Fort Worth impact you. So if you were impacted by Northside not having one, Southside community not having theirs, Diamond Hill not having theirs, this is also a time for you to come here and talk about how the county has impacted Fort Worth's ability to vote.
I just do want to point out that even though city council doesn't have say over how elections happens, that's a county thing, this affects them because in 2027 they all have to run again. And do you think they want less people to vote? Not all of them.
Some of them do.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we still do not have an apology or an accountability from Mayor Parker regarding threatening casket. There's been zero follow-up on public comments and what are we going to do to restore public comments.
Even though we showed up with solutions.
And we showed up with solutions. A dysfunctional Fort Worth ISD state takeover the last 2 weeks where people were asking what the curriculum, will kids read books, what parent involvement.
Not getting any.
And not
if
getting
anybody
answers.
local was going to be tasked with being on this committee.
Tarrant County sends the most kids to state prison. I don't know if y'all saw Dr. Catherine Gosby's incredible speech at Commissioners Court. And you heard our big story, Stephanie and Alberto. It's like we're not in normal times. And everyone needs to be bolder. We can't just say, oh, I vote. We now have to say, and I use my voice every time I'm available. And especially in 2026, where we'll only get 10 public comment meetings.
At most.
At most. It was 20 when Mayor Parker started. That we have to utilize every resource. And it's not just about getting people to public comments. It's about showing them that people power is there. And when they see a consistent number of people mad that tell stories online, that tell stories in communities, a big thing we're excited about in the next couple hours, we're going to have another gather. The last gather, we ran out of seats. So we humming. It's coming. But we need everyone to start understanding your voice is as important as your vote. And I think that's the synopsis of this whole episode.
I love that.
All right, so we're ready to move on to our wins for the week, which we have several of. It's always nice to see when we have things to celebrate. Speaking of celebrating, I think all of us were at the Welman Project's birthday party yesterday at the amphibian stage parking lot where they had all kinds of cool things. So that's a win too. I loved that. And they announced that they have a new home.
Yes, that was big news. So also speaking about community art spaces. So Welman does amazing things, but my God, the amount of stuff they fit into such a small building is wild. The space that they're moving to is 26,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's huge. But also, it is the original Kimball building. So the Kimball family that made their money through, was it like grocery stores? They have, their original building is just south of JPS. And it's a historic building. It was going to be torn down, and the landlord who bought it, like right before it was going to be torn down, he is investing heavily in that building and giving them incredibly fair rent. And they're going to have more room for a makerspace, more room for classrooms, for art and activities. It's so incredible. And the history of that building is fascinating too. One of my friends has a picture of when it was, whatever Kimball's office, and there's pictures above his desk that now hang in the Kimball Art Museum.
Yeah, it's a great building, and I'm so glad to see it adaptively reused, because there was conversation about it being housing while I was in office, and that fell through, and then it was at risk of being torn down, like you said. Its location is a little tricky. Yeah. Right there next to railroad tracks and silos and a bridge that goes over the railroad tracks, but they have adaptively reused it, and I think that this is a great home for the Welman Project.
It is a huge win, and they're moving in quick.
So
too.
much for running through these guys, by the way.
Sorry.
But, no, I'm just joking. But shout out to the Welman Project. Go ahead.
Another win is the screening of The Librarians, which was held at the Modern. All of us were there as well.
Yes.
Wesley, were you able to attend that?
I wasn't. I was busy shooting Nydia's video.
There you go.
Yes. The Dallas moves its municipal election to November of odd years. That's powerful just because it keeps a consistent habit of voting and keeping the same time and date. But what you got first on that one?
Well, I used to do work with the Center for Election Science. So I was meeting with all sorts of people around DFW who were working on changing elections for the better. And I remember meeting the guy who, this was his mission in life, was to move elections. He wanted them during presidential elections because all he cared about was voter turnout. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. There's not enough attention for the news or volunteers. It's just too difficult. But they moved it to odd number years. So that means every single November, every year, that you're voting either in a presidential, a statewide, or a municipal one. And it gives time between. Because we have that problem here in Fort Worth, is that our municipal elections, because they're in May, coming right off the heels of a statewide or federal election, that people are burnt out. And so
we have to vote again?
Exactly. And people just don't know. There's not every time that you have to vote in May. So I think this is absolutely something that Fort Worth needs to look into heavily for increasing voter turnout and just making it better.
But filing has opened for the 2026 primary elections, and there's some Tarrant County candidates that we'll go over when the filing closes. I think the filing opened November 8th and is closing December 8th. So Fort Worth Report has an article that is keeping track of people who have filed so far. So that's another win that I think there are some people of note that have put their hat in the ring.
Yes, indeed.
A couple wins I have really quickly is the Doc Bookshop has done these just amazing events, but they bring in these authors, and one of the authors that they just had was talking about the importance of black bookstores, and her book has picked up a lot of national traction, and the Doc Bookshop is in there, being one of the largest black bookstores. So that was a cool function. Also, yesterday, Saturday night, Afro Community, Jalen Gordon, her and Dante Williams and Community Frontline, they launched a SUSU, which is a community financing system where people put money in, and then entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs, can ask for things for certain projects, and they vote on it as a collective. I got to be there. I donated some cash to it, but just to be in the experience of people trying to find creative ways to finance things, check out Afro Community or Community Village and the SUSU. They're looking to get up to 100 members. That's their goal. They're at 27, but it's for black entrepreneurs who are looking for community and also creative financing ways as you navigate that. So that was something that was really cool as well.
That's awesome.
I think the last win that we had was that TxDOT wrote an article basically saying, or has done a study, and there's been several articles about it, that car-dominant Texas needs to be more friendly to public transit. So, of course, Wesley and I count that as a win.
I mean, when I read that, I was like, are the pigs flying today? What's happening?
Yeah, I saw several posts about hell freezing over. The only bad thing is that they say that it is needed, but the funding of all of that is in the hands of the state legislature and the federal. And so right now, that's not the friendliest place for putting more money towards public transit. But
Comes back to elections.
if we can keep pointing to the data that shows that this is necessary.
Or if we can vote in some people who understand the importance of transit.
There we go. So when it comes to losses, I think last week we had a win that Beau French was stepping down as Tarrant County GOP head, but he has now announced that he is going to be running for the Texas Railroad Commission.
I knew that loss was coming, so I wanted to get that win in while I could.
Yeah. So the Railroad Commission doesn't really have anything to do with railroad. It has to do with managing oil and gas, but it also has a pretty big budget that can be used for environmental impact things as well. So he would not be a great person to be in that role.
Absolutely not. I remember the last time this was up for election, we had an environmental law lawyer who did amazing work holding these gas and oil industries accountable. And then we had just a rancher who's never run for anything before. And guess who won? So.
And it's also important, though, to know that Beau French, Mercy Culture, Lee Wamsgons, Wilkes & Dunn, billionaire West Texas oil money. Yep. So this Christian extremism is booming with oil money, and it's a two-part. They're trying to conserve it, make our government a Christian state while also capitalizing on the low regulation, low pro community, and they're relentless on this. And so that is very dangerous as well.
Yep. I also want to point out that in Beau French's tweet where he announced that he's running, he says, "This will be the best way that I can defend Texas, stop the Islamic invasion, and defeat the left." In his announcement, it's so clear he doesn't care that you know what the railroad commissioner does. He doesn't care about holding the oil and gas industries accountable. He just wants a larger platform for his hate speech.
Yep. And this is the part where the Mayor Parkers of the world, who just enables this and never said anything. This is why I don't think I would ever call Beau French stepping down a win, because it's been a loss that a white man can just be enabled to do whatever the fuck he wants and never have to be punished. But my loss is also, though, why is this also, is TCU. TCU just did a bump in its tuition again, making it more expensive than Harvard. And people was like, man, why do people...
I think the last bump made it more expensive than Harvard, so now it's even more expensive.
But some people were asking me, like, man, why do people pay for it? I was like, because conservative parents will pay any type of money to make sure their kids don't get conscious. So that is why TCU is the most expensive, is because I know my kids will actually not learn what diverse thinking and conscious ideology looks like. And so they could get that wholesale at just Texas A&M, but maybe it's not fancy enough. So this is where you do it, is at TCU.
So speaking of education, there were teachers questioning the future of the Texas takeover of Fort Worth ISD. There were several public meetings. I think that the takeaway from that, for me, not having attended those meetings, but having heard clips of what people asked there and the lack of answers that they received, that all kind of came across as a loss in our opinion as well. But it doesn't mean that people should just give up and step down. I think it's another important area for people to be keeping engaged and involved if that's an area that is important to you. If you have children in the district, even if you don't have children in the district, this is something that is important to all of us, to ensure that good outcomes happen for educating children in Tarrant County.
Yeah, and that's another thing our mayor is trying to normalize is, oh, this is all fine. You know, and even that Texas Tribune article, hey, you know, Governor Abbott's trying to, like, make it a super majority for you can't, you know,
for
increase taxes
taxing
and stuff. That's another big loss. Like she's not saying yes, but she's not really saying no.
Yeah, I mean, for 10 years we've been saying that local control is being threatened by the state and that they're making it harder and harder and harder for us to deliver the things that we need to deliver locally, be it an ISD or a local government. And they just continue to go down that road. They're going to starve the money necessary to provide things, and then they're going to blame the people who are trying to provide the things for not providing them well.
Yeah.
So we touched on a number of actions throughout this whole episode. So if you didn't find them all scattered throughout the episode, we do have a number of actions just to list off in our action items so that they're all concise and in one place. So the first one is the fact that there is still yet another public comment opportunity at the City of Fort Worth. December 2nd is a public comment meeting where you can show up and speak to anything that moves you, anything that you are passionate about. So Wesley's going to be there talking about art. Whatever it is that you think the council needs to hear you on, that's your last opportunity of the year. So we encourage you to show up on December 2nd for public comment.
All right. Speaking of city council meetings, Arlington has theirs this Tuesday, November 18th at 6:30, and there's two priorities they're going to have people speak on. First one is the Arlington City Council amendment, where it's about the anti-discrimination chapter of the city code that will remove the term sexual orientation and gender identity expression as a protection clause. And supposedly it was supposed to be to preserve federal funds, but it's not. No one has lost funds because of this, and there has to be some other reason. And they're really making the wording very wonky here, where now I'm seeing people who are organizing around this shifting easier, like not even being in opposition, because now being potentially in opposition is actually, they changed the wording so much that it's gotten very confusing. And so I don't know the end route of there, but just be on the lookout. Like, I would go to these Instagrams and look at the most freshest asks that they want from you to do.
Whose Instagram?
That's going to be in the link, and that is the one I have set here is Help Center Texas.
Perfect. Yes.
Help Center Texas. And the second one is community members are demanding the immediate release of Maher Tadabishi, the primary caretaker of his physically disabled son, from ICE. ICE abducted him on Tuesday, October 28th, while he was on a visit at the ICE field office for a routine check-in. He's lived here for decades, granted legal permission because of his disabled son. His disabled son, Wael Tarabishi, is an American citizen who suffers from Pompe disease, and his family members and others are also asking Arlington City Council to do some type of immediate release proclamation to do what's necessary to get their father back. So those two things that are happening at Arlington City Council.
So the last action that can be taken is that the People's Commissioners Court will be held on Tuesday, November 18th from 6 to 9 p.m. Because Tarrant County Commissioners now just meet once a month, the community has created this opportunity for the public to be heard still, so you can join this vibrant group in a civic forum where people speak to power and listen as well. So we encourage you to participate in that.
And the topic there is going to be about the jails and the discussions around the jail deaths, but then also sending kids to for-profit prisons, or also the new data around how we are sending Tarrant County is sending the most kids to state prison. Twice as many as Harris County.
And not to mention that there was some email suggesting that they send kids to adult prison,
which is illegal. So there's going to be a lot of people there mad, upset, and thinking about how we organize for that. Again, another example of there's a ton of things to organize for. All right, beautiful people, thank you for listening to the 817 podcast. We're going to continue to run as an important episodes for you. What I would ask for you to subscribe, leave a review, 5 stars on Apple or Spotify. The bigger we get, more haters are coming. So make sure that you're doing your part. Share it with a friend. But then also realize, we got to make 2026. We all got to get our mental ready. That's going to be a year of fighting for democracy, for freedom, for Fort Worth we all want to see. And so just make sure you enjoy this holiday, this rest, because we're going to have a big 2026. And I feel it.
There you go.